Daniel Hoffman's Form and Fable in American Fiction is an exploration of how American literature intertwines with folklore, myth, and cultural identity. Hoffman argues that the nascent American literary tradition distinguished itself by adapting folk motifs and narrative forms, transforming them into vehicles for exploring the nation's complex social, moral, and existential dilemmas. By examining authors like Washington Irving, Nathanielhawthorne, Herman Melville, and Edgar Allan Poe, Hoffman posits that these writers drew from a rich reservoir of oral traditions, local legends, and European mythologies to forge a uniquely American aesthetic. This synthesis of high literary art and low folk culture, he suggests, allowed these authors to grapple with the contradictions of a young nation seeking to define itself against old-world traditions, while confronting its own burgeoning identity. Hoffman's analysis begins with Washington Irving, whose The Sketchbook and tales like Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow exemplify the adaptation of European folklore into an American context. Irving's whimsical yet pointed stories, Hoffman notes, repurposed Germanic legends and British narrative forms to reflect the peculiarity of post-revolutionary America. The figure of Rip Van Winkle, sleeping through the tumult of independence, becomes a metaphor for a nation caught between colonial past and uncertain future. Hoffman highlights Irving's use of humor and irony to critique American provincialism and materialism, suggesting that these tales establish a template for later writers to blend folk elements with social commentary. Moving to Hawthorne, Hoffman delves into the darker undercurrents of Puritan folklore. In The Scarlet Letter and stories like Young Goodman Brown, Hawthorne excavates the moral rigidity and communal guilt of New England's past, using allegory and symbol to probe the tensions between individual sin and societal judgment. Hoffman identifies Hawthorne's genius in transforming historical anecdotes and local superstitions, such as the Scarlet Letter itself, a relic of Puritan punishment, into universal meditations on guilt, redemption, and the human condition. The forest, a space of both danger and liberation in Hawthorne's work, embodies the collision between repressed orthodoxy and primal instinct, a theme Hoffman traces to European folk tales of enchanted woods as sites of moral testing. Herman Melville's Moby Dick receives extensive treatment as Hoffman unpacks the novel's mythic dimensions. The white whale, he argues, transcends its literal existence to become a polyvalent symbol, a manifestation of nature's sublime indifference, a mirror of Ahab's obsession, and a cosmic riddle echoing Judeo-Christian and pagan mythologies. Hoffman emphasizes Melville's synthesis of seafaring lore, biblical allusion, and Shakespearean tragedy, creating a narrative that is both a rollicking adventure and a metaphysical quest. The Crew of the Pequod, a microcosm of America's multicultural fabric, reflects Melville's engagement with the democratic ideals and racial anxieties of his time. Hoffman's reading underscores how Melville's formal experimentation, the encyclopedic chapters on whaling, the shifting narrative perspectives, serves to elevate the story into a mythic register, blurring the line between realism and allegory. Edgar Allan Poe's tales of terror, meanwhile, illustrate the grotesque and gothic possibilities of American folklore. Hoffman situates Poe within a tradition of Southern Gothic, where European motifs of haunted castles and doppelgangers morph into psychologically charged landscapes of madness and decay. Stories like The Fall of the House of Usher and The Telltale Heart exploit folkloric tropes, cursed families, premature burial, to explore the fragility of reason and the pervasiveness of guilt. Poe's influence on later writers, Hoffman suggests, lies in his ability to transmute regional superstitions into universal nightmares. His stylized prose, heightening the tension between the macabre and the sublime. Hoffman's study, while rooted in close readings, also engages with broader cultural narratives. He posits that American writers, lacking the deep mythological reservoirs of Europe, turned to indigenous and immigrant folklore to construct a shared imaginative lexicon. This process, he argues, was inherently paradoxical. The young nation sought to reject European hegemony, even as it recycled its narrative forms. The result, Hoffman contends, is a literature marked by tension between civilization and wilderness, individual and community, faith and doubt, that mirrors America's own ideological conflicts. Methodologically, Hoffman's work reflects the influence of mid-20th century literary criticism, particularly the new critical emphasis on close reading and formal analysis. Yet his attention to cultural context and folk traditions anticipates the interdisciplinary turn in American studies, bridging literary aesthetics with anthropology and historiography. While some critics have noted limitations in Hoffman's scope, his focus on canonical, predominantly male authors overlooks contributions by women and minority writers. The book's enduring value lies in its nuanced exploration of how myth and form coalesce to shape national identity.